Hello and welcome, and this is Peter, and the very first thing I'd like to say to you is thank you very much for listening to this audio. I really appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Today's audio is about a distinction called choice. Most of us are not very good at this. Most of us make decisions. So today's audio is about choice versus decision. And you will be very familiar with the decision-making process, okay? Because if you're in sales and in business intelligence, you'll be in the decision-making process. You'll be injecting yourself into the decision-making process for your customers, and you'll be in the process of making decisions yourself on a daily basis, okay? So in general, so let's get started. Let's jump into this. And the way I'm going to jump into this is I'm going to talk about decisions first and make sure that we're both really clear what a decision is, and we'll talk about that we're good at it, and you can think about some of the decisions you make. You can even write them down in your book there, and we'll talk about why decisions have both positive and negative consequences for human beings and being human. Okay? So let's get started with decisions. What are they? How do we go about them? What are the upsides of decisions, and what are the less clear downsides of decisions, right? So you were very likely taught at some point in time that in making a decision, what you need to do is balance the alternatives. So you were probably taught to draw like a T on a piece of paper or in a notebook, and on the left hand side put one branch of the decision, on the right hand side put the other branch of the decision. And you were probably taught to write the pros and cons of each decision down each side of the branch, right? So on the left hand side you might write the pros and cons of that decision. On the right hand side you might write the pros and cons of that decision, and you may even have been taught to create a weighting system and to weight various aspects of decisions and solutions, and figure out which decision to make based on even something as sophisticated as a weighting system, right? Now, if you're in BI sales or any sales, when you present your proposals to your prospective customers, guess what they do? Okay, just guess what they do. If you're selling $1 million deals to billion-dollar companies, which is what you should be wanting to do, right? If you sell those deals, you can be absolutely sure that the customer is going to run you through a decision-making process where they're going to give weightings to the features and functions of the proposal that you bring forward, and they're going to do the same for your competitors. So this decision-making process affects you because that's how you get your income. You get your income from persuading people to make decisions for what it is that you offer as a salesman, right? So that's kind of how that goes. That's the decision-making process. And you'll have been taught this as a young man, that whenever you have a decision in front of you, stop, think about it, balance it out, look at all the alternatives, maybe get some advice and guidance, and maybe even do something as sophisticated as weighting the various pros and cons of the two or more options. And once you're confident in which way it is you're going to go, then go down that path. Okay? That's what you've been taught. And if you have been taught that, then you can be nodding your head and say, yeah, Pete, I hear what you're saying, and I've done that, and it's worked for me on many occasions. Sometimes it hasn't worked. On the balance of probabilities, the balance of alternatives, it's gone pretty good. So what's wrong with this? You're obviously alluding to there's something not as good as this as something else. So what do you got? You might be there, right? And if you are there, that's fantastic, because that's exactly where I would like you to be. All right? So, decision, decide. Where does that word come from? D, and it comes from, I think it's the Latin. It's either the Latin or the Greek. It's been a long time. And D meaning to, and side meaning to kill off. As in, suicide was self-kill off, right? Decimate, 10, decimate was to kill off 10% of troops. So decide and suicide and things like this. The side bit was CIDE, was the kill off bit, the remove, the get rid of, the end, the terminate, don't go down there anymore, right? So to decide was typically to look between two alternatives and choose one alternative, and in the choosing of the one alternative, the other alternative could not be chosen. The other alternative was killed off, for example, is the way to look at it. So that's what a decision was. A decision was a look at two alternatives, and we will take one alternative and we will remove the other one from the possibility of being taken. Okay? That's what a decision was. Now, of course, a decision can be between three or more alternatives. When you're bidding on deals with large customers, if you're bidding $1 million BI deals to billion-dollar companies, you can be pretty sure that more than two people have turned up for that, right? You can be pretty sure that there's at least four. Because at the end of the day, when a billion-dollar organization makes a commitment to a multi-million-dollar investment, they will generally release an expression of interest, and that expression of interest will generally get back a whole bunch of companies who say, yeah, we have capability in this area, and then they'll narrow down the expression of interest list to companies that present their credentials, and their credentials indicate that they can indeed participate in this project, they can do it, and they'll generally narrow that down to somewhere between 8 and 12, generally 8, and they'll give 8 to 12 companies a document with a whole bunch of questions on it as a kind of preliminary to the request for proposal, and they'll say to the 8, 12 or so companies, please answer these questions and please go into these sort of details. We are going to evaluate you against this decision-making process, and we'd like to see how you perform. And from that, we're going to pick, say, 4 vendors who are likely to carry forward. Okay? And so you have to sit down and you have to answer those questions, and you'll be called in for generally a 1-hour presentation to explain yourself, and you go through that process, right? Then if you did a great job on that area, if you did a great job in that response, then you might make the final 4, okay? And then when you make the final 4, they will typically give you the official RFP. This official RFP, especially for government departments, will have generally hundreds of questions, okay, that you have to go through and answer, and they'll all be scored and evaluated and all this stuff, right? That's your decision-making process. There's not really much you can do about it for the vendor side, for the customer side. They are going to go through these processes, and you better be good at managing them. And if you're not good at managing them, then you better get good at managing them, because your path to selling $1 million deals to billion-dollar companies includes those sort of RFPs. Okay, it is generally very unusual for any sizable organization like that to issue a large deal like that without going through an RFP process. And one of the reasons is that they will have established rules to ensure that there's no collusion between employees and suppliers to get money out of the company through the purchasing process. Okay? So virtually all companies have auditors, all big companies have auditors who have established rules about how purchasing processes will be performed, and those purchasing processes have to be very well documented and have to be able to sustain scrutiny, sometimes 2 or 3 years down the track. Okay? If an allegation comes out 2 or 3, 4 years later that there was collusion between a supplier and an employee or a group of employees on a bid, that paperwork has to be in place, and those people who are accused of collusion have to be able to point to the paperwork and the process and demonstrate that they did not collude with the vendor in issuing this, awarding this tender. That's what the big companies do, gentlemen. If you don't know that, if you're still fresh to sales and you don't know that all the big companies do this, then it's best you do know, okay? Because sometimes you can be driven virtually crazy by just the sheer volume of questions and procedures and paperwork and presentations and discussions that you have to go through, okay? It can just about drive you crazy. But that's why they are working to ensure that there's no collusion from the inside to vendors. And by the way, gentlemen, that does happen. I've seen it happen, right? I have seen numerous cases, one which I'll talk about later on another audio, but I have seen numerous cases where people working in the purchasing department of huge companies have ripped millions of dollars out of them via a collusion with a vendor that everybody's pretty much got away with because the company doesn't want to let anybody know that they were scammed like that, right? So I've seen that happen in a number of cases with my own eyes, gentlemen. So don't think that it doesn't happen, right? And your auditors are there to prevent it from happening. And, you know, the auditors will make life difficult. So that's what the decision-making process looks like. And when I did the forum in 1995, my business card read Decision Support Specialist. Decision Support System Specialist. That's what my business card read. That I was involved in the decision support specialty. I was involved in helping management of large companies, billion-dollar companies, improve their management decision-making processes. That's what I was doing, right? And, of course, decision support specialist had a certain listing within billion-dollar organizations. And choice support specialist, well, that's not going to get the same listing. So even after I learned the distinction I'm about to share with you between decisions and choice, I couldn't change my business card to be the choice support specialist for a company because they were in the mindset and had the listing of decisions, right? Now that's all very positive. I mean, many decisions you make in your life are going to have a substantial effect on your life. And for the most part, if you're relatively good at making decisions, you are going to make decisions that work out relatively well, right? So decision making has been sold to you and me and everybody else as something you have to do, and it will help you have your life turn out better than not making those decisions, just letting life happen to you, right? So what's the downside? Given that it's established, I'm certainly allowing and giving and establishing that going through decision-making processes is what we do. It's normal, It's common in the majority of cases, indeed the vast majority of cases. Decisions reached in an analytical way like that tend to work out relatively well, okay? And, that's all good. That's all good. But what's bad about decisions? What's bad about decisions? Well, one of the things that's bad about decisions is once you have made a decision, you tend to stick with it come hell or high water. You tend to stick with it rather than bail out if it has turned out to be a bad decision, right? You tend to stick with it. And often people stick with a decision they made because, they've gone through the process, they've decided on it, or they've given their word and they'll stick with their word and they will just keep going, okay? Regardless of how badly something's working out, they'll just keep going. Now, there's a number of reasons why people will just keep going, right? Number one is not many people want to admit they got the decision wrong in the first place, okay? So if you change your mind after you've made a decision, there's an element of not looking so good. There's an element of losing face very often, okay? So if you've gone through the process of making the decision and then the decision's not working out how you look, our looking good often takes over and we want to save face and we want to stick by our decision. That's one thing that happens. And so oftentimes we stick with that decision long after we are now given more information and we're aware that it's not working out the way that we planned, but we tend to stick with them. Okay? Now also, there's a saying in business of spending good money after bad. And I'll give you an example. I won't name the company, but Sean Kelly and I were bidding on with a Indian systems integrator. So we were working on a deal with an Indian systems integrator where we would provide the high level data models, ETL, business consulting experience, etc., to a telco in the UK. This would have been our third telco in the UK. And the telco had literally billions of dollars it was going to spend on marketing. It was fairly new into the mobile market, but it had this war chest of a stack of money it was going to spend trying to steal mobile off, the other big ones, BT and Vodafone and Deutsche and those guys. They were going into the UK market and they were going into the UK mobile telco market, and they wanted to spend up big and grab as many customers as they could get. And so one of the things that they were looking at doing was building a data warehouse for all the analytics for the telephone company. So an Indian outsourcer was invited us to participate with them. This was one of the companies that we'd worked with before, so it's fine. And they said they had a very good relationships inside the company, and with the knowledge that we could bring to bear, our combined chances of winning were very, very good. So we looked into that and we said, yeah. And the CFO of this new company happened to be a former customer who'd been poached from his he was working at another customer of ours, and he was poached in the startup process to come across to be the chief financial officer. So we knew the chief financial officer, and the chief financial officer knew that we knew how to deliver this system, right? This data warehouse that they want to build. And so we had at least one guy on the inside who had been a former customer who would back us, okay? With not back us such that it would be unethical, but back us as in, I worked at another major telco and these guys implemented what they had, and I've seen it up close and personal, and it was a really good project and everybody was happy, and that telephone company was much bigger than you are, and much bigger than you'll be for the next 5 years. So, these guys know what they're doing, basically. And of course, the usual contenders turned up: IBM, Oracle, Teradata. They all turned up, plus some other outsourcing companies turned up. Everyone was there because, hey, this was a startup telephone company, right? Literally had billions of dollars in the war chest. They wanted to start up in the UK and bring a new mobile telco service out in the UK. Okay, so everyone's there. So we were in discussions with this company, and they said, we want to do this on SQL Server. And Sean and my position was, well, you can do this on SQL Server, but we won't do that for you. Right? We will not implement our data models in a telephone company on SQL Server. We just won't do it. Right? And they're like, well, why wouldn't you do that? If we offer, you've got a very good background and skills, etc., great references like Sean Kelly, #1 guy in Europe on business intelligence, whole stack of books, frequent speaker at conferences. They're like, this deal is worth well over £1 million just to get going. Why would you not take the £1 million if we told you we want it on SQL Server? And Sean said, it's quite simple, because it's not going to work. I said, SQL Server, wonderful database. We've done projects on it. We know exactly how it works. So if you talk to Peter here, he can tell you the ups and downs all through SQL Server. He's done quite a few of these. And I used to share my customers with Sean's customers. And he said, one of our customers is a gold certified Microsoft partner, and every data warehouse they have is on SQL Server, and it works just fine for those companies. But you are a telephone company, and your volumes will not be handled by SQL Server. I have my professional reputation to think of. I know that if you do SQL Server, this can't work, and I don't want my name attached to any failures. And one of the points he made is, I've been doing this for 20 years, and none of the projects I have done have failed. Okay, because I don't do projects that fail. And, SQL Server, as I said, fine database, but not for you. Okay, and he said, we'll do DB2 on MVS, we'll even do DB2 on Unix if you really push us, although we don't really want to do that because it's bad on Unix. We'll do Oracle on anything. We'll do Sybase IQ. We'll do Netezza. And there's a couple of other more esoteric databases that we would consider working on if you really wanted to buy one of them. But from us, for the main, you can do Oracle. We will, Sean's saying, I will put my name on Oracle, Sybase IQ, DB2 MVS, DB2 Unix if you really push me, and Netezza. I'm happy to do this project on any of those databases. You can choose which one you want. Personally, he said this personally, given our recent experiences, you could do worse than Netezza. We have been very pleased with how Netezza has performed. So, and Netezza will be much cheaper for you than the other ones that I just talked about. And we can absolutely guarantee that you'll get a fine result with Netezza. But I can put my name on and guarantee, Oracle, DB2, Sybase IQ, Netezza, and whatever other one that I said. I can't remember. And so, this went back and forth over about a month, and we were talking to our guy on the inside, saying, call him Fred, saying, Fred, you know us, we're honest. Our professional opinion is SQL Server is not going to work. We would really like you not to waste your money doing that. So if there's anything that you can do, all normal, above business, above board, to advise the people making this decision not to choose SQL Server, that'd be great if you can do that. And he said, yeah, I'm invited as a CFO. I'm invited to some of these meetings, and your concerns have been raised and presented to the evaluation committee. Not much more I can do. He says, I'm a chief financial officer, not a chief technology officer. I have said in meetings, you guys know what you're doing, and if you say something won't work, I bet on it. I put my money on it. Right? So he said, okay, well, as long as you're being upfront and above board about it inside your company, following your processes inside your company, fantastic. Thank you very much. So anyhow, in the end, the technology guys won their argument, and this telephone company, decided to go SQL Server Extended Edition. Stunningly ridiculous decision, right? And so we said, okay, fine, you did that. So we called them up, said, fine, thank you very much. Here's our business cards. When it doesn't work, please give us a call, right? So remember, this is a startup. They've only got like a couple of 100,000 customers at this stage, right? And they're expecting to get they want between 5 and 10 million customers. They're expecting to get between 5 and 10 million handsets out there on their network, right? This is not just two guys in their garage study company. This is a seriously bankrolled telco launch, right? And even with just a couple of 100,000 customers on their network, they couldn't get the ETL to work on this database, let alone query the thing, right? They could not get the data warehouse implemented with less than 1/10 of the customers that they actually wanted. Less than 10%, okay? So as we always do, Sean called up our buddy the CFO about 6 months later and said, Fred, how's it going? And he said, it's going exactly as you predicted. They can't get the thing to run, and the project's a disaster. We spent about £1 million and nothing's delivered, and it's not in production. They can't get past their system testing. And we're like, so would you like to talk to us? Would you like to ask the people running the project if they'd like to talk to us? And he said, no, it's just going to be a case of good money after bad. We're just going to keep trying to make this work, and it's just going to keep not working. So, no, there's no point in you guys talking to us right now. So that's the good money after bad type of scenario, where a telephone company, I mean, for goodness sake, these are not novices, right? We're a telephone company. The IT people for a telephone company, a launch telephone company, decided to use SQL Server as their data warehouse database, something that's just not possible to do. And they doubled down. 6 months later, they were still doubling down. £1 million later, they were still doubling down. Now that we've chosen SQL Server, we have to make it work in a situation where it never could work, right? So one of the bad things about decisions is this tendency to double down, to say, okay, I made a bad decision. It's been proven I made a bad decision, but I've now got to try and make this work to save face. Otherwise, I'm going to look bad. I might even lose my job. And the guys who made that decision should lose their job, right? That's one of the problems with decisions. People just double down and they just keep going and keep going and keep going, even when it's clear that the decision was a bad decision. Okay? So, how does choice factor into all this? Now let's talk about choice. Choice is something pretty strange as a distinction in landmark, right? And people take a while to get this, right? So what's the exercise? As in everything in landmark, there's an exercise. And the exercise is that a member of the audience comes up to sit on the stage with the forum leader, and they have replicas, not real, but replica chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream, right? So the exercise is the forum leader sitting there with a replica chocolate ice cream and a replica vanilla ice cream, and the participants sitting opposite them, closely opposite them. such that they could actually reach out and grab one. And the question is, chocolate or vanilla? Choose one. Okay? And, the person will put their hand out and grab one. And let's say the person grabs chocolate. And the forum leader will say, okay, you took chocolate. Why did you take chocolate? And the person will say, well, I like chocolate. And the forum leader will say, great, that's a decision. You took chocolate because you like chocolate. Okay, fine. And the exercise is set up to say, see if you can make a choice as opposed to a decision. Okay, so then the person goes, okay, I chose chocolate because I chose chocolate. Well, the next time I'm going to be asked, I'm going to choose vanilla. All right, that's generally what happens. So the forum leader goes, chocolate or vanilla? And the person goes, vanilla. Well, and then the question is, well, why did you choose vanilla? And the answer is, because I like chocolate, but the last time I chose chocolate, because I like it, you told me that was a decision. So now I'm choosing vanilla because I don't like vanilla as much as chocolate. So maybe that's a choice, right? And the forum leader will say, no, that's a decision. Okay? And the person will go, oh, hang on a minute. It doesn't matter which one I choose. You're still calling it a decision. And the forum leader will say, yes, I've asked you to make a choice, and we're exploring this distinction called choice, and so far you've made two decisions. Goes the person. How do I make a choice then? And then the forum leader will go, chocolate or vanilla? And they'll go, chocolate. And she'll say, okay, there's chocolate. Why chocolate? This time I chose chocolate just because I chose it, not because I like it. and the forum leader will generally say, that sounds like you picked it trying to get out of the whole concept of I like chocolate, therefore, and I like chocolate more than vanilla, so I can't choose vanilla and I can't choose chocolate. So you chose chocolate out of, I'm going to choose chocolate because I can't figure out what else to choose, right? To make a choice. And the person will generally say, yeah, well, that's kind of it. I chose chocolate, and you asked me why, and I said, because I like chocolate, and you called that a decision. And I chose vanilla, and you asked me why, and I said it's because I don't like it as much as chocolate, and you called that a decision. Now I'm choosing chocolate again, just out of, I don't know what else to do to make a choice. So chocolate. and the forum leader will say, well, that's a decision because you're choosing chocolate because you don't know what to choose. So that's a decision. And by now the person's generally getting frustrated, right? And when I did this in my forum, one of the people who I have mentioned earlier, this Corinne lady, she was the person she happened to be the person chosen from the audience to do this chocolate vanilla thing. Now, by now, I understood what a decision was versus a choice. Sorry, by now I understood what a choice was. And I'm now killing myself laughing. Because one of the things I do is I learn things quickly, I get things quickly, right? And by the third decision, I understood what choice was, and I'm killing myself laughing because my business card says decision support specialist, and there's no way I can make it say choice support specialist. So I'm having a good old laugh to myself, right? And Corinne, of course, believes that I'm laughing at her. So she's getting angry at me, and I'm laughing at myself. And of course, I can't speak to say that I'm laughing at myself. So she's now getting angry at me, right? And then there's Gail was again, okay, well, when you choose chocolate because you don't know what else to choose, that's a decision. And now, again, chocolate, vanilla, make a choice. And Corinne's like, well, vanilla. And she's like, okay, vanilla. Why did you choose vanilla? Well, everything else has been wrong. I'm just trying to say something and get it right. and Gail says, so you're trying to make a choice and get it right. That's what you said? Yes, and I've only got two options, and I've chosen each of them twice now, and apparently all four attempts to make a choice have been decisions, and I'm confused and I'm upset, and he's laughing at me. And so she was getting more and more aggravated, and Gail saying, "That's a decision. That's a decision. I want you to make a choice." And then the coaching starts coming in, and Gail's saying, "Remember what we talked about choice. Now, I haven't told you this yet. I've told you a little bit about the exercise, but I haven't told you what choice is. So what's a choice? You know what a decision is. You make them all the time. What's a choice? A choice is choosing something absent considerations. Right? Choosing something absent all considerations. That's going to sound really weird, right? That's going to go diametrically opposite to everything that you've been taught. How could I choose something absent all considerations and possibly hope to get that right? My goodness, I've got to go through all the considerations in order to make the right choice. What I might call a choice, right? But a choice is choosing absent all consideration. Absent all consideration. Just choosing based on nothing. Right? Choosing based on nothing. Now you can see why I'm not going to be able to sell that to any corporations, right? Choosing based on nothing. Choosing absent all considerations. So here was Corinne trying to choose between chocolate and vanilla, absent all considerations, but every time she tried to make a choice and was asked, "Why did you make that choice?" her answer was a consideration. First time it was, "I like chocolate more than vanilla, so I choose chocolate." Well, "I like chocolate more than vanilla" is a consideration. So the second time, when she chose vanilla and was asked, "Why did you choose vanilla?" and her answer was, "Well, I chose chocolate because I like chocolate more than vanilla, and that was a decision," you said, "so I'm choosing vanilla because I don't like vanilla as much as chocolate. I think that might be a choice." And Gail says, "But that's a consideration. Choice is absent consideration. That you like vanilla less than chocolate is still a consideration." So then when she chose chocolate the next time and Gail asked her why, she said, "Well, you told me last time that it was a decision because I like chocolate more. Now I'm just choosing it because I think if I just choose it like this, maybe that's a choice and not a decision." And Gail was like, "So you're choosing this because you haven't figured out how to make a choice, and you're trying to go through the process of figuring out how to make a choice, and you think this might be a choice. So you're choosing this because you think this might be a choice." And Corinne says, "Yeah, I mean, what else am I supposed to do?" And Gail just smiles and said, "Well, that's a consideration. The consideration that you're choosing this because you might get it right as making a choice is still a consideration. So it's still a decision. That's not without consideration." And she's like, "Ah." And by now I'm laughing. And she's getting angry and pointing at me and calling me names. And so Gail says again, "Chocolate or vanilla?" And she chooses vanilla. And Gail's like, "Why did you choose vanilla?" And she's like, "Because I don't know what else to do." I don't get it. I don't know what else to do. I'm just choosing something. And Gail's like, "So you chose vanilla because you don't know what else to do, but you're still trying to make a choice." And Corinne says, yes. And she goes, well, that's a consideration. Choosing something because you don't know what else to do, that's still a consideration. And by now, Corinne's really aggravated, and everybody's like, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. Everybody's sitting there like, I'm not getting it. I don't get it. But of course, I'm sitting there with a big shit-eating grin on my face because I got it. Like, after the second one, I got the idea. Choosing is choosing. As Gail said, choosing is making a choice absent all consideration. Absent all consideration. And I got it after the second time, and I'm sitting there going, that's a really interesting concept. How would that work? I was at the I got it, how would that work stage by now, and laughing at myself for being a decision support specialist. So Corinne had a few more goes, and they were all based on some form of consideration. Because, gentlemen, when we're making decisions, we're taught to make decisions based on considerations. We're told to consider the alternatives. Well, in considering the alternatives, we are taking into account some considerations called alternatives. We are making our decisions based on considerations, whereas a choice is choosing something absent all consideration. Take no consideration of anything into account, just choose. Right? Now you can see how most people would look at that and go, I really don't get it. When I choose something, don't I need a reason? Don't I need a consideration for choosing that? Don't I need some justification? Because when somebody asks me for justification, they're expecting an answer, and I should have a good one, shouldn't I? Those are all the thoughts that should be going through your mind right now. How is it possible to choose something absent all considerations, and then how does that stand up to any scrutiny from anybody else? Aren't I going to look a little bit foolish? Aren't I going to look a little bit stupid? Well, yeah, you are, right? Because all the other people who don't know how to make choices, they're making decisions, and they expect you to do the same, and they expect you to take into account considerations, right? So, finally, you could see the little light go off above Corinne's head, and she gets it, right? Finally, she gets it. And she goes, okay, I've got it. And Gail goes, good. Chocolate or vanilla? She says, chocolate. And Gail says, why did you choose chocolate? And the answer was, because I chose chocolate. Right? And Gail goes, very good. Now, chocolate or vanilla? Vanilla, says Corinne. Gives her the vanilla ice cream. Why did you choose vanilla? Because I chose vanilla. That is choice absent consideration. Chocolate or vanilla? Chocolate. Why did you choose chocolate? Because I chose chocolate. No consideration. No reason. I chose it because I chose it. Right? Chocolate or vanilla? Vanilla. Why did you choose vanilla? Because I chose it. Anything else? No? Because I chose it. I chose it. Why did you choose vanilla? Because I chose it. Why did you choose chocolate? Because I chose it. On what basis? No basis at all. Nothing. No consideration at all. I chose chocolate, absent all considerations. I chose vanilla, absent all considerations. Well, you can see why this is going to go down like a lead balloon with most of the people around you, right? And in listening to this might be going down like a bit of a lead balloon with you, too. You might be going, Pete, what are you talking about? I chose it because I chose it. What about drawing a T in alternative 1 and alternative 2 and the pros and cons of those things. What about doing that? That works. This, I chose it because I chose it. How many times are you going to get that wrong? Okay. That might be your thinking right now. By the way, the answer is, if you just choose it because you choose it, how many times are you going to get that wrong? The answer is never. You will always be right. If you choose something just because you choose it, absent all considerations, you will always be right. Okay? You will always be right. Now that doesn't mean that the effect that you hope that this choice will have will necessarily come to pass. And in fact, if you hope that this choice will bring about what you hope to come to pass, it's not a choice, it's a decision, because it's based on a consideration. That which you hope will come to pass. Okay? But if you make a choice, absent all considerations, you will get it right 100% of the time. Okay? You'll get it right 100% of the time. Because a choice, when you make a choice, it's not intended to generate an outcome. Okay? Think about that. Let that settle in. When you make a choice, the choice you make is not made in the consideration of generating an intended outcome. It's not made in consideration of that. If it is made in consideration of generating an intended outcome, it is a decision because it's made with a consideration in mind. A choice is simply choosing because you choose it. Not for a consideration, not for a reason. So when you're asked for a reason, there isn't one. Okay? There isn't one. And we're not used to doing that, right? We're not used to when someone says, why did you choose chocolate? We're not used to saying, I chose chocolate because I chose it. No considerations. Because the other person is going to be critical of you for saying that, right? So you're going to find an excuse and give it to him. So this idea of choice, choosing something absent all consideration and choosing that powerfully and standing in this place of having chosen that powerfully absent all considerations, this is weird territory for most people. Okay? It's weird and strange territory. So why would we do it? Why would I talk about decisions as, one thing which, sometimes, most of the time work out, but sometimes we stick to our decisions long past their use by date, long past we know that they are not working anymore, versus choice, where we choose based on no considerations, and we choose powerfully based on nothing, standing on nothing, and we'll get a little bit later into the power of our word and integrity. That's a later episode. But we choose based on nothing other than our word that we choose this, and we choose it powerfully. Why would we do that? What's that about? Why would we do it? Right? Well, why we do that is we are far more likely to be unattached to the outcome of a choice. In fact, if you do it properly and you understand what it is that you're doing, when you make a choice, you will be unattached to the outcome of that choice. Now, one of my prior audios was committed and unattached. When a person makes decisions, they are typically attached to the outcome of those decisions. They have a stake in the game, right? Sometimes they're looking good. You see how these things are starting to work together, right? So when I make a decision, I have a stake in that decision. My looking good, my reputation is involved in that decision, right? So when Sean Kelly said, no, we will not do your data warehouse on SQL Server, was that a decision or a choice? And the answer is it was a decision, because Sean's consideration in making that statement was, if we do this, if we accept this project with your insistence on SQL Server, it will fail and my reputation will be affected, because I will have a failed project on my project sheet. And I don't have one yet, and I don't intend to have one. And Sean, may he rest in peace, went to the grave without, to my knowledge, any failed BI project. Remarkable achievement. An absolutely stunningly remarkable achievement. So that was a decision, because there was a consideration of his reputation. Okay? So I'm not saying that we make choices all the time. I am saying that there are some areas in life where we make choices, and it can be much more powerful than making a decision, because we will be unattached to the outcome if we do it right. Okay? So where we make it, let's repeat that because it bears some repeating. Where we make a decision, and we are making it in respect of considerations, we are very frequently attached to the outcome, and we will very frequently double down and keep going down that path even after it's been demonstrated to everybody's satisfaction that this was not a good idea in the first place. Generally, we will just spend good money after bad. And it takes quite a courageous person to say, you know what, we screwed that one up, and we've got to cut it off and start again. Right? That's a pretty courageous person in a billion-dollar company to admit that they screwed it up and they got to start again, right? Whereas when you make a choice, you make it absent of considerations. Therefore, if the choice that you made doesn't turn out, you are free to make another choice. Right? You are free to make another choice. Not that you are making the other choice for the purposes of having the situation turn out, because that would be a consideration. But you've made a choice. You've moved down the timeline a little bit. You've moved down the path of time a little bit, and you can see that the results of the choice are not satisfactory to what it is that you're up to in life, and you can at that point in time simply make another choice, because you're unattached to the outcome. You're committed to the outcome, but you're unattached to it. And you can be particularly unattached to the way in which the outcome is created. That's something to be particularly unattached to. And if the outcome never happens, you can be unattached to the outcome never happening, right? Now this might sound like, as you're listening to this might sound like an excuse for failure. This might sound like, oh, so if you make choices, you can just walk away from the choices that you made. That sounds like an excuse for failure to me. You might have that thought going through your mind right now, right? Well, you could make it mean that. You could make it mean that. You could say, well, if he was committed, he'd stick with it and he'd keep at it time and time and time again until he made it work, right? And in fact, Peter, you have said in your earlier audios, if you are committed to being a salesman for $1 million deals to $1 billion companies, all you've got to do is stick at it. What if I make a choice about this and then I just give up at some point down the path? Wouldn't that just be me making an excuse for failure? Wouldn't it? And there is a very good argument that that is the case. There is a very good argument that that is the case. Certainly, I'm not going to argue that it's not the case in many cases. I would say in many cases, people make choices and get further down the path and go, I don't like that choice and I don't like how these things are turning out. I'm going to make another choice. And people say, hey, aren't you giving up? And the answer is, yeah, I'm giving up. I'm walking away from that. I'm going to go and choose something else now. Oh, isn't that failure? Well, in your world, that may well look like failure. It's not failure in my world, right? So, choice has the effect, at the end of the day, of, I've made a choice, I was committed and unattached to the outcome that I'm wanting to create out in the world, and I've moved down the timeline a bit, and now I'm making another choice. And I'm going to honor the last choice I made, and I'm going to honor this choice I made, and I'm going to keep making choices, and just keep making choices, and keep making choices, and perhaps this outcome that I'm looking to create out in the world will happen or will not happen, right? Perhaps it will happen, perhaps it will not happen. I'm out to be at cause in the matter of making this outcome happen, but I'm making it through the agency of choice, not through the agency of decisions. Okay? Now, like I said, this is pretty hard to grapple with. If I was you, I wouldn't go running around exercising my choice muscles that quickly. If I was you, I'd listen to this audio a few times. I'd think about it. I'd go to the Landmark Forum, right? That's one thing I always recommend. And I would give consideration to what is this thing called choice, and then where would I want to use this in my life, and why would I want to use this in my life. And I'm going to cover this in subsequent audios. When we get down to the end of the curriculum that's taught just in the forum itself, the last thing you learn in the forum is how to create your being by your word, right? And your being that you create by your word should be a choice, okay? So all this stuff I've been teaching you, or repeating to you that I learned, is all in the Landmark Forum. To this point, if you're on this audio, everything you've heard is in the first 3 days of the Landmark Forum. And when you get to the end of it, the distinction that you will have is the very first ability to create your way of being, to create your being as a choice, not as a decision. Okay? That's where we're headed. Now, you may have already made the decision that you want to be a salesman who sells $1 million deals to $1 billion companies. In fact, you should have made that decision in order to be listening to this audio, right? You didn't make it as a choice because you didn't even know what a choice was, and by landmark definitions, that's a landmark distinction. You didn't know what a choice even was until you listened to this audio, and you learned that a choice was to choose between many alternatives based on no considerations. Just your word, just your choice, based on no considerations. So you've been listening to these audios based on the consideration that you want to be a salesman selling $1 million deals to $1 billion companies, because that's going to make you money, and it's going to have a lot of good results in your life. And that's a decision that you made to go down that path. as we get further into this, gentlemen, I'm going to give you the exercise and opportunity to make a choice about that. Okay? To choose that absent all consideration. And that's something that people find really hard to do. I remember way back in the day doing landmark stuff where we were put the question of choose powerfully something that already exists in your life, right? And for me, this is a tiny snippet from the advanced course for you, right? So when I was doing the advanced, I had learned choice and all these things, and in the advanced course, basically you go through your life and you pull your life apart into tiny little bits, completely deconstructing your life and everything about you, right? And then you kind of put it all back together as a choice rather than as a result of circumstance. It's a really weird thing. Like I said in another audio, when I talked to Sophia on the Monday or the Tuesday after my advanced course, and she said, "What did they do to you on the weekend? You seem really strange. You seem really different. What did they do to you on these 4 days of the advanced course?" And I looked at her and said, "I have no idea. I actually have no idea what was done to me. So I think it was really good, but I have no idea what happened, and I'm still going to take a while to process this and figure it out, right?" And she's like, "Wow, I'm not really," and her take was, "Wow, I'm not really sure I want to do this because you look really messed up today." You look at peace, but you look really messed up. I said, "I am really messed up. Mentally, I am really messed up today. I think I need some time to kind of put the pieces back." Now, one of the exercises that I did in the advanced course was find something to complain about, right? What is something in your life that shows up as a constant complaint, right? Something you're frustrated with, something that, you could really live without, right? Something really frustrating, upsetting, and important to you. And pick that, and we're going to deal with that issue next, right? And you don't use your wife or boyfriend or whatever, you don't partner with them in these discussions. You partner with somebody else who doesn't have a vested interest in their relationship with you, so that they can obviously be more straightforward and honest with you, right? So the person that I was partnered with in this was a woman called Senka, right? Who was a very good friend of mine from the forum. And, she's like, let's do the exercise. Pick something that's really aggravating you, that's really upsetting you, that you want to change in your position in your life on. And gentlemen, at that time, one of the things that was really pissing me off, because my wife was treating me so badly, right? And now she'd started treating me a little bit better. But one thing that was really pissing me off is the fact I was raising 2 stepchildren. That was really aggravating to me at the time. And obviously stepchildren had a level of attitude towards me as well, and it's a very difficult situation. Raising stepchildren, gentlemen, it's a very difficult situation. I don't recommend it to anybody. It's just tough, right? So I was raising 2 stepchildren as best I could, and I was resentful of them. Honestly, I was resentful of them. I was resentful the fact that Jennifer always put them first and would always choose spending time, etc., with the stepchildren and our children rather than with me. I was relegated to the doghouse, pretty much. I was just the mule who was supposed to go work 14, 15, 16 hours a day to pay for everything, right? That's where I was. And so I was quite resentful of the time, attention, money, and everything that was being poured into these stepchildren, despite the fact I loved them and cared about them and I wanted to give them the best opportunity. I was pretty resentful about that. And, looking good says you don't tell people that you're resentful of your stepchildren. That's not really looking very good, is it? Right? But I was resentful of them. And so, one of the things we learn in the advanced course is to choose that which exists powerfully without consideration. Okay? Let me say that again because that's going to blow your mind. Right? One of the skills we learn in the advanced course is to choose that which exists without consideration. And choose that powerfully. And I was like, this was the lesson. This is where this exercise was headed, right? I didn't know, but this is where it was headed. Choose that which exists powerfully without consideration. And the exercise was bring up an issue. And what we're going to do at the end of it, we didn't know this, was choose that existing situation powerfully without consideration. And then see what happens, right? So I was talking with Senka, and I was just sharing with her my frustration and resentment with the children, with the stepchildren, and she could really get it as a woman. She's like, you know how many women raise stepchildren? None. Almost no women will raise stepchildren. But plenty of men raise stepchildren. So, she really gets it. She's like, no, I wouldn't like to put all my time and effort and energy into somebody else's children. I can really understand your resentment. In fact, I think men who do this are fantastic men who are doing something that I would never do myself. So absolutely, I would never do this myself. So I can understand your aggravation and your resentment, right? And this discussion from my side got very heated. Very heated. I'm almost ashamed to say it, but it got very heated. I was really, after about 15 minutes of this discussion, I was angry. And Senka is giving me the training that she'd been asked to give her partner, like everyone. And the training was choose these stepchildren powerfully without consideration. Choose them without consideration. And I'm like, what the hell without consideration? You have any idea how much money this costs? And my wife refuses to work. And I'm working every hour the good Lord sends me. I'm just a freaking workhorse around here. And I get no respect, no care or attention back from my wife. Like, I'm not very happy about this situation. How can I choose this situation powerfully without respect to considerations? There are considerations. They exist. And she's like, hey, Peter, I'm just doing what the training says, right? And so we got into quite a heated discussion. Obviously not her fault. But I was like really angry. After 15 or 20 minutes, I was like really angry. And in the end, the insight was, these children never asked to be in this position. These children never asked to be my stepchildren. These children became my stepchildren through the process of me falling in love with their mother. It's not their fault. It's not their responsibility. They didn't ask for this. And in fact, more than likely, they'd prefer to be living with their mother and father in the same house. They didn't ask for it. So when I got to the stage in this conversation with Senka of, they never asked for this. Life is tough for them. They don't have their father in the house. It's tough for them. They didn't want this. Now, when we take them and drop them with their father and they spend time with him, they love it. And they come back to us, and they're really upset that they have to leave their father again. It's horrible. It's as bad for them as it is for me, possibly worse. I had to say, I made a decision to have these children as my children, as my stepchildren. They didn't. They didn't have a say in the matter. And Senka said to me, yes, you made a decision. And the decision's killing you. The decision's eating you up. This decision to fall in love with their mother and have these children as your stepchildren, that decision, that's going to kill you. That's what this is about. Now make the choice. And I got it. In the instant she said that, I got it. I had made the decision. I knew Jennifer since I was 12. I knew she was divorced from her husband. I knew she had 2 small children. And I still made the decision to spend time with her. And I still, in the spending time with her, still fell in love with her. And then we spent time together working out whether this is going to work or not. We dated for 5 years before we got married. I made the decision to get engaged, to ask her to marry me. I made the decision to get married. And these children obviously came as a package deal with their mother. So this was all a decision that these children would come along and these would be my stepchildren. These were all decisions. And when Senka looked at me and said, Peter, this decision is killing you. This decision will kill you. Make a choice. I went, she's right. I'm going to be in an early grave the way I work. And just for those of you who don't know, I had a very severe degradation of my health just prior to this. Just prior to what I'm talking about, I was very ill. And a doctor actually told me, a doctor looked me in the eye and told me, you are not going to make 40. You are not going to make 40. You have to do something because, Peter, you are not going to make 40. Now, I was 31 when I was told that. Right? It's 1995. In 1995, my family doctor said to me, looked me in the eye and said to me, you are not going to make 40. You cannot do this. No man can do what you're doing. You can't do this. And, part of what this was working every hour the good Lord sent me to pay for everything because my wife refused to work. That's part of what you can't do this means. It's like, you're just one man. You cannot carry the burden of a family of 6 on your shoulders alone. You have to sort this out with your wife. You have to sort something else out because you cannot do what it is that you are doing. You can't keep it up. 31 I was then. 31. I should have been a man in my prime. I was so sick, gentlemen, I would pass out. Literally pass out. I was in meetings with customers. I would pass out in meetings with customers. The only way I could make sure I stayed awake, for example, when I was driving, I had to eat very sugary lollies to get enough sugar into my system to make sure I didn't pass out when I was driving a car. That's how sick I was. I was so sick, I was passing out, just collapse and fall down. And I was 31, right? And Senka was saying to me, you can't do this. This is going to kill you. This decision that you made. Make a choice. See what happens. And so in that instant, gentlemen, in that instant, I made the choice to have these two children in my life as stepchildren, absent all considerations. Chose powerfully an existing situation, absent all considerations. And then a miracle occurred. It's really funny how this stuff works, right? It's really weird. It's really strange. Once I chose them, absent all consideration, what comes up next is love. Okay? What comes up next is the presence of love. Pretty weird. So then I realized, okay, I love these children. I'm in the presence of my love for these children. Providing for them is not a chore, it's not work, it's a privilege. Responsibility as a privilege is a discussion that we'll have later. Responsibility as a freedom. Responsibility as a full self-expression. We'll come up with that later, right? We'll discuss that in more detail later. But what I wanted to share with you, this little snippet from the advanced course. You've just heard about choice, and you've just heard about choosing something absent consideration, and you've heard me say there are some good reasons why you would want to do this. Okay? Well, the exercise in the advanced course is to go through all those things in your life. One of the things we do is we go through every single thing in our life that we can think of that is an issue to deal with, and we choose it powerfully, absent all consideration. Now that's going to sound really weird to you, right? But we do that. Okay? And as you do that, what comes up is the presence of love, and what comes up is responsibility as a choice, and responsibility as a freedom, and responsibility as a full self-expression. That's what comes up, right? And then another miracle happens, and your life becomes much lighter and much freer and much easier to deal with. And in my case, my health turned around with other assistance, of course. That wasn't the only thing that happened that turned my health around, right? But my health turned around. Fantastic. Right? My health turned around. So that's kind of how that went. Now, I didn't recover fully from the abuse I put my body through. I still, today, 2019, it's now the 2nd of January 2019. Today, I still suffer consequences in my health for that effort that I put in when I was a young man. I still suffer consequences. But gentlemen, in a couple of days, I'll be 55. When I was 31, I was told, you're never going to see 40 if you keep this up. Well, gentlemen, in a few days, I'm going to see 55. So I'm doing okay. And in fact, at 55 years of age, I have lived longer than 99.9% of all men who have ever lived. I'm in the 0.1% of men who made it to 55 years of age in just a couple of days. So that's doing good. And yet, here I was at the age of 31. I was a wreck. Physically, I was a wreck. And my attachment to outcomes was one of the things that had me physically be a wreck. Right? And one of the things I was doing is, how can I generate the amount of money that's needed to provide for a family of 6 in good comfort in Sydney? That's tough in 1995. In 1995, being a single income earner for a family of 6 in Sydney and giving your family a relatively good standard of living and doing that, that was tough. And to do it, excuse me, I worked, how did I do that? I just did stuff other men were not willing to do. I worked so much and so hard and so long that no man in his right mind would do what I was doing back then. And I was compensated for it handsomely. Right? Because to get the workload, to get the stuff done that I was doing, you'd have to hire 2 men, at least. So I was cheap by comparison. If we have to hire 2 men to do this work, then hiring 1 man doesn't really matter how much we pay him. It's still cheaper than 2 men because of all the taxes that happen. So that was kind of how that worked, right? I was prepared to work harder than the next guys, and that made me worth more than the next guys. It's as simple as that. But I was able to manage that work harder through these distinctions of landmark. Now, of course, in the end, I worked less. In the end, I was able to slow down a little bit. But sometimes, I worked hard. And one of the things I did at Landmark in assisting was learn how to work very long hours over an extended period, manage my health, and come out the other side okay, having produced the result that I wanted to produce. I learned that at Landmark. And that's where I got the ability at Landmark to work just a string of what you would call 36-hour days. You go to work at 9 o'clock on one morning, you work straight through for 36 hours, a couple of breaks, etc. You go home, get 8 hours sleep, come back, 8 or 10 hours sleep, come back, do it all again. Right? Typically, I was able to string 12, 13, 14 of those days together. And in fact, when we went live, one of the jobs on my resume that's public is Car Phone Warehouse. I did Talk at Car Phone Warehouse. And when we were going live, I did 10 days like that straight. 10 36-hour days straight in the go live process. And I knew I could do it. My project manager was panicking, how are we going to get all this stuff done that needs to be done as we do our cutover? And I said, I'm going to do that. And he said, but you can't. And I said, well, yes, I can. His name is Peter as well. I said, oh, yes, I can, and I will. That's how we're going to go live. This is a plan to go live. I'm going to be here for like 2 weeks, working 36 hours a day. That's how we go live around here. That's how we go live on my projects, Peter. And he's like, okay, you want to do that? You think you can do that? I believe you. And I did. And I remember as we were doing this, it was the Easter period. We were going live over Easter. And as we were doing this, the younger guys would come by, the guys in their 30s, their 20s and 30s, and they'd see me there hour after hour after hour after hour, just concentrating and working on what I was doing, running stuff and taking notes and making sure everything was happening. These guys came up and said, man, you are just freaking amazing that you can just sit here and do this. Like, really, this is just unbelievable. And I went, yeah, this is one of the reasons you companies hire me is I can do this. That almost nobody else can do this, right? To get other people to do this amount of work in this period of time, you got to hire 3 or 4 people. I can do it myself. And I know exactly what needs to be done. I know how it needs to be done. And I know the run times. I know everything about it. And here we are. We're going live. And for me to put a system in and go live, it's much, much cheaper than getting anybody else to do it. And they're like, wow, we're impressed. Well, that level of stamina that I had, even up to my late 40s, that came through committed and unattached. That came through choice. Because responsibility tends to be a burden, and we have an audio down in the future called Responsibility as a Burden versus Responsibility as a Freedom. Once you turn responsibility into a freedom rather than a burden, turns out you can do much more stuff. You can get much more stuff done. Okay, and if you can get much more stuff done, if you can do more deals, if you can do more meetings, if you can do more of everything, you'll sell more deals. Pretty simple. If you do more of everything, you'll sell more deals. You'll make more money. Okay, and that's what you're listening to these audios for. Okay, I think that's about enough. Hour and 24 minutes. That's a very long audio by today's standards. Choice versus decision. Really important. I can't tell you how important this is. If you never figure out how to make a choice, absent all considerations, life is going to be tougher for you than if you do. Okay? Life is going to be tougher for you than if you do. And I shall leave it at that. With that, gentlemen, thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.